Okay, it is 1 minute past the top of the hour. I will kill the music. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking time out to come to another webinar by CDW on the hot topic of Copilot. We're talking today about how we prepare for Copilot, a little bit more into details about securing our data so that we're not accidentally exposing stuff, and Karen will get into that. I'm Sherman. I'm one of the solutions architect in our digital workspace practice. I'm based out of Vancouver. I'll let Karen introduce herself, and Kelly, we didn't practice this, but Kelly is not presenting, but she will be helping on the chat. And so on that front, we didn't decide this part either. If you have questions about Copilot, let's use the Q&A feature in Teams, and then that way it allows us to manage it better. The other time we did this in November when we had another introduction to Copilot webinar, the chat was just blowing up, and we were trying to struggle with keeping up with all the answering all the different questions. So maybe the Q&A will help us manage that a little bit better. So yeah, I'm one of the solution architects, and what I do is I help clients work through their productivity, collaboration, content management, internet communications, business problems, and so using, of course, Microsoft 365. Yeah, that's me. I'll leave it there. Karen, I'll let you go. Do your thing.
Great. Thanks, Sherman. Yeah, I appreciate the intro. So hi, everybody. My name is Karen Skapski, and I also work at CDW Canada. I am on our professional services delivery team. So I work with clients hand in hand, implementing technologies like the ones we're reviewing today to help you secure and govern your data for Microsoft's Copilot.
And Kelly, did you want to do your self-intro? Yeah, why don't you do that?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Kelly LaForest here out of Victoria, British Columbia. I'm on the same team as Karen, and I am focusing on Copilot for Microsoft 365. So I'll be delivering workshops to customers to help them understand at a deeper level the different use cases and scenarios where Copilot can transform the way we work and save everyone time and be more productive, and also help people understand the nitty-gritty technical of what we need to prepare. And I'm really excited to be a part of this workshop today and hear from Sherman and Karen and answer all your questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Right off the bat, I just saw this. We didn't develop a time machine. It is not January 11th. It is the 22nd. I don't know why it says January 11th there. I have no idea. Slip with the keyboard maybe. Anyway, onward. AI. This is our agenda. I'm gonna be light. I'm gonna just do my sections 1 and 2 recaps are gonna be super quick, I hope. The core of this session today is Karen's talking about data governance and security strategies, and then I want to try and leave her as much time as possible for an actual live demo. I haven't seen it myself, so I'm excited. So let's get into it. You know, obviously in the last not even year, probably, well, maybe depending on what you do and how in tune you are with staying on top of tech and AI and ChatGPT and things like that. There's a lot of hype around AI, and everyone's, everything's powered by AI now all of a sudden. Microsoft themselves used to say intelligent this, intelligent search, intelligent meetings, and now instead it's powered by AI. Again, not faulting Microsoft. We're just kind of building on that. I guess bandwagon, whatever you want to say. So the question that we want to ask is, does this stuff really work? Is AI actually useful at work? And when Microsoft announced last spring publicly that they were going to have this thing called Copilot or some kind of AI assistant, they had already been using it internally for a bit. And so they were able to do some research and conduct some surveys and whatnot. And they found really positive results from those surveys, right? You can read the stats here. The digital debt that people were feeling is real. The new data shows that the productivity gains from AI are also real. So the series of tasks that they had people do, searching, writing, summarizing content, some of the things were all improved. Also easier first drafts. Like if you asked me to write a report on something I'd never really done before, well, I might know a question or two, and I might prompt Microsoft Word and say, give me a draft of how I might, I don't know, create an annual report or something like that. And it might say, hey, here's some typical things that an annual report would contain in this 300-page document. It's not going to generate the 300-page document, but it would give me a good outline to start with. And from there, I can at least the juices start flowing, right? Most importantly, however, is that there was no loss in accuracy of content. So the generated content didn't sacrifice that accuracy. And so if we're saving time with, as a result of this new tool, new service, whatever you want to call it, what are people actually doing with that extra time? Most people said that something like Copilot, in this case specifically Copilot, did save them time so they can focus on more important work. What does that mean? And I will note that in the survey, some people did say, by the way, the report is the Microsoft Work Trend Index report. They do one once a year. Last year, they did two, one in the spring, and they did a special one in November. So you can read about it, and I can definitely post the link to that. Lots of stats. So I'm trying to summarize it here in one slide. The focus work that people were talking about is stuff that requires human thought, the creative stuff that you can't really automate. And they didn't do as many mundane tasks. There were a few people that said, it wasn't a lot, but there were a few people that said, hey, with that extra time, I can do more meetings. And the report said, well, that might be a little counterproductive. We're trying to get people to move away from meetings because we all know sometimes there's meeting overloads, and they're not necessarily the most useful, the best use of our time. And so we want to have the people that save that time so they can go away from the meetings and then, oh, thanks, Karen, at the 1 minute mark. See, she's a VIP. That's why her message popped up. I'm already at 10 minutes. Okay, I'll go really quick. Okay, next slide. Okay, so everyone loves a free lunch, right? But do they? So one of the interesting things about that survey was, hey, you know, if we could have Copilot or free lunch, which would we rather have? And 30% said they would actually rather have Copilot. Sorry, most people said they would rather have Copilot. 30% said access to Copilot would actually influence their choice of employer in the future. Won't go through this much. Well, I will go through this. This is just a quote again from the report. There were savings, real savings, daily savings of about 14 minutes on average. Doesn't sound like a lot. Translates to about roughly 1.2 hours per week. You can do the math. For someone who makes about $80K per year, that's roughly $40 an hour in cost to a company, which means we know Copilot's not cheap, but that Copilot can provide a return on that person every month after only about a week of use in any given month. So, you know, something to think about. What is Copilot? I'll zip through this. This is just a slide to say there are many different types of Copilots that Microsoft has. Some are released, some are in preview. Copilot for Microsoft 365 is the one that we're talking about. That's the one that was released on November 1st. How it works, again, I'm recapping the November webinar a little bit. It's taking our prompts. We ask it something like, summarize the 3 o'clock meeting with Taylor and let me know what my action items are. It takes all that information from our tenancy inside our Microsoft 365 apps, utilizing the internet if necessary for knowledge, and then returning some data, returning some content back to us. So this thing called RAG now, Retrieval Augmented Generation of Content. That's a thing now, and yet another acronym. And so that's what's happening and how Copilot works. Again, it's embedded in our Microsoft 365 apps. We can utilize Copilot as a little sidebar assistant in all of these apps. Teams is probably the one where it's pretty powerful, where we can say, catch me up on a meeting, what's been said so far, what are my action items, and so on. Bing logo, but it's basically the new Copilot logo. We can, again, use it like if you've used ChatGPT, it's a similar experience. This one's important just because it is Copilot has access to our content and also the context of that content. And so there's some workings around that. But when you see this, then you kind of have to ask, well, wait a second, if Copilot has access, and by the way, it's nothing new or special, Search had that, right? Search had access to our content, didn't have the context. Copilot adds a little bit, and some of the technologies around what makes Copilot work is that context. And so if I ask for search for payroll in the organization, I better not find it because I'm not in HR and I'm not a senior exec. So how do we protect against some of that potential data leaking within an organization? I'm not talking about externally. And so that's the gist of this particular webinar and session, which at the 11-minute mark, don't forget I lost 1 minute. So there you go, I'm on time. Karen, over to you.
Hey, thank you, Sherman. I just want to make sure I have lots of time for demos because
I know, I
that's
said
the
it.
part that everyone always wants to see. Okay, 1 minute. All right. Okay, thank you, Sherman. So yeah, with the power of AI and Copilot, right? Data governance and security are not just optional. They are essential for maintaining your data integrity, meeting compliance standards, and maximizing Copilot's capabilities. Right, so Copilot for Microsoft 365 helps us delve into the depths of our organizational data, much like revealing the hidden part of an iceberg. And as Sherman mentioned, it doesn't give us access to anything we wouldn't have had access to already through Microsoft Search, but Copilot can quickly scan through large amounts of data that would take regular human a significant amount of time to review. So it's going to surface content that users wouldn't have easily found on their own. And this is a really great thing, right? But as an organization, it's important to consider what content exists, who has access to it. And we need to ask ourselves before we roll out Microsoft 365 Copilot, is our information secure and is it accurate? So how good is the source material that Copilot consumes to answer information, right? Do you keep everything? Do you archive outdated information on a set schedule? Where does that data go? Where do users store their data on a network file share, OneDrive, SharePoint sites, Teams? Do we keep multiple copies of files as version history? Do we keep old ones when we have a final version? And do the old versions have accurate data in them? These are all questions we can ask ourselves. And also, with security, oversharing can happen, right? Public Teams, sites, SharePoint sites that just have the default permissions, everyone except external users. Someone might have even given someone access to a folder or site, forgotten. People can be added to security groups. And then those security groups can be used for permissions. Lots of opportunities for data leakage. So to ensure that we audit, secure, and govern our content, we can look at our business processes, right? Revisiting our workflows, our data management practices, our decision-making protocols. We can define and document policies, procedures, conduct training. But this approach is best when we also have technical guardrails in place. So today, we're going to review some of the ways that you can build those technical guardrails with Microsoft Purview to build a foundation for data governance and security and ensure that the information that Copilot for Microsoft 365 ingests is both secure and accurate. Microsoft Purview offers flexible solutions to understand and categorize your organizational data, right? Know your data with the ability to scan across environments from on-premises to the cloud. It ensures that no data goes unnoticed. It provides hundreds of built-in classification methods, allows for precise data categorization and protection, and for organizations with specific needs, there's the option to customize your classification methods. So diving into a few of these methods, sensitive information types. These are predefined or custom patterns that recognize and categorize items like social security numbers, credit card details, other personally identifiable information based on pattern recognition and content. Trainable classifiers are advanced machine learning tools within Purview. So these learn from examples to identify and categorize unstructured data like resumes or invoices, and these evolve their accuracy over time as they're trained with more data. So these also come with the option for built-in types or creating your own custom classifiers. And exact data match takes categorization a step further by allowing organizations to use their own sensitive data to create a fingerprint. So Purview can then use that fingerprint to locate any exact matches across your organization's content, ensures highly precise detection and protection. So in Purview, we have the Content Explorer, which you can use to analyze your sensitive data. And we'll jump into that later with the demo. And then the Activity Explorer as well goes a step further. And this will track data interaction and movement. So it actually gives you insights into how information is used within your environment. And all of these tools combined give you a really powerful way to understand what's sensitive, what's critical, and the overall data landscape of your organization. So Microsoft Purview is an entire massive suite of solutions, and it offers a really broad range of tools, but we're going to zoom in on just 3 main components that are particularly vital for setting the stage for Copilot. I just heard somebody make a big sigh. I'm not sure if that was Sherman, but I hope I'm not putting anyone to sleep. Promise we'll get into the demo soon. So we're going to zoom in on these three components that particularly work well for setting the stage for Copilot, that ensure our data is clean, secure, well-governed, create an environment where Copilot can operate effectively and safely. So first, we have data loss prevention, which is crucial for preventing the accidental or unauthorized sharing of sensitive info. This is our first line of defense against potential data breaches. And then next, we'll discuss data lifecycle management. So this aspect of Purview helps us retain, review, dispose of, and manage content throughout its lifecycle. So this is going to help us ensure that data is relevant and secure from creation to deletion. And then last, but certainly not least, we'll touch on information protection. So this feature is essential for discovering, identifying, classifying, managing, and protecting sensitive data. And this is going to ensure that our sensitive info is appropriately handled and safeguarded. So in the following slides, we'll dive deeper into what each of these solutions do, and then we'll jump into a live demo. All right, first up, Microsoft Purview's data loss prevention. This is designed to stop users from sharing or storing sensitive content where it's not supposed to be, which is key to maintaining our data security posture. DLP works proactively by setting rules that respond when sensitive content is being handled. So if someone tries to share a document containing sensitive data under conditions that aren't allowed, DLP can automatically restrict access or, in exchange, even encrypt the document to prevent unauthorized use. A practical example of DLP in action would be preventing uploading sensitive documents to like a company-wide SharePoint site that Copilot might index, right? These controls protect your privacy, protect sensitive data from being indexed and used by Copilot. And one of the standout features here actually is DLP's user education component. So when it detects a potential issue, it doesn't just block the action. You can also provide real-time policy tips and notifications. So you can say, hey, we can't upload sensitive information into this site because it's open to the whole company. Try a more secure site, or whatever however you want to customize it. This is going to help users understand your company policies and learn how to handle sensitive data properly, right? Because after we have these trainings, we want to think that we'll remember everything, but it's even more helpful to provide those in context hints. And it's also a monitoring tool, so it can notify or send alerts to admins, other relevant people when there's an incident. So admins can learn what is the sensitive information that people are trying to share where, and hone in on any needs for further training or changes in policy. And Microsoft Purview Data Lifecycle Management is a feature that ensures the handling of our data from its creation to its disposal. Again, plays a key role in clearing out unnecessary data, but also securing vital information so that it's not deleted. So this information management tool, it allows for the retention of items either indefinitely or for a set duration. And this can depend on factors such as when the items were created, modified in response to its specific events, even from the moment a employee is terminated. So once the retention period is over, we can configure that system to automatically delete the data, reassign the classification, start a review process, or trigger automated processes for further action. The policy application within data lifecycle management can be executed in a few ways. Users can manually label content, or we can direct the scope to specific locations. We can allow it to function automatically, targeting data based on its attributes or on properties related to users, groups, and sites, right? So if it contains, department finance, make sure you retain this for at least 7 years. This is really going to give us dynamic control over our data and ensure that it's going to comply with our governance policies, it's going to reduce risk, and it's going to keep everything relevant. And then last but not least, again, Microsoft Purview Information Protection. This is our strategic tool for identifying, classifying, managing, and protecting sensitive data. So this uses automation and machine learning to discover and classify data at scale. And it seamlessly integrates these classifications into our workflows. So sensitivity labels, these are at the heart of information protection. And these allow us to tag content with specific labels that not only classify data, but also control who has access to it. These labels can also be applied manually by end users to individual items, files, emails, meetings. They can also be applied to containers like SharePoint sites and Teams. And like with information management, these can also be auto-applied based on if they meet certain conditions, like containing sensitive information types or specific keywords. And these labels aren't just for categorization. These also help control access. So we can encrypt content based on its label, apply permissions to specific users or groups, do things like, prevent items from being printed by anyone outside the organization, apply a watermark. We can set expiration dates for access and really ensure that this sensitive information is only available to authorized individuals. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the Content Explorer tool, this can pinpoint where your labeled content resides, even when it's moved, and just keep that data secure through its life cycle. I'll show you in a minute, but in the context of Copilot, this really ensures that as we generate and we share content, those sensitivity labels and the protection and the access controls travel with the content, right? So for example, if you're working with Copilot in Microsoft 365 chat, it's going to respond and respect the sensitivity labels that are applied to the data it references. So if there's a label on specific data that is preventing me from accessing it, Copilot is not going to include any of that in its response. And it's also going to tell you, if it does give you a response that references sensitive data, what that classification is, so that you know, okay, the answer I got here is labeled highly classified. Maybe I shouldn't repeat this to the World Wide Web. And when new content is created using Copilot, right? So if you're drafting a content in Word, you're referencing a file that has a sensitivity label applied, this new content is actually going to inherit the original label. So this is going to keep consistent security and governance, even in dynamically created content, right? No longer do you have to worry where you're creating this content. If you're in a secure site, combination of this with DLP is going to help educate you on the best approach to take. So without further ado, bet you want to see what this all looks like in action, right? So we'll jump over to my demo tenant and we will take a look.
I see that Vipul, if I hope I pronounced that name correctly, has a question. I don't know if you want to. Yeah. I think you can come off mute, either that or post it in the Q&A. That works as well.
Hello. Okay. Is Purview DLP applicable to data and info stored outside Microsoft ecosystem? So yes, it can be. we're not focusing on that for this webinar because out of the box, Copilot for Microsoft 365 is not going to index any of that content. So, I mean, you can bring in that content through connectors and so on. But so the answer is yes, but we're not going to jump into that for this particular webinar. There be, and I see a question from Paul as well, will there be any trial licenses to test at a small scale before deploying to larger numbers of users?
Karen, I'll address that at the end.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to jump in and show you some of these technologies that we've been talking about. I also want to mention that any Microsoft 365 customers who either have a trial for Microsoft Purview, or if you have an E5 plan, you can activate default labels and policies for Purview information protection that can help you get up and running quickly. So you can use these as is, you can make some changes, but I'm going to drop the link in the chat here for everybody, or in the Q&A rather. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to show you is Content Explorer. So I zoomed in here so that people can see everything, but now the menu looks a bit different to me. So under data classification here, we have Content Explorer. And in here, I can actually go in and regardless of whether I've set up these labels or not, we can see these canned sensitive info types like credit card number, like physical addresses, you know, with no setup, no labels rolled out, you can still go in and see how much data you have that matches these patterns and where it is located. So you can get a real good grasp and a handle on that information should you choose to roll out Copilot for Microsoft 365. So we have these sensitive info types, right? We have sensitivity labels. These ones are not, these ones did require some setup, but again, this is part of that, that link that I sent, the Q&A. And then also these trainable classifiers. So things like, right, project documents, agreements, etc. So we can go in and say, okay, let's see, highly confidential. We have some highly confidential information in Exchange. Where is that located? Oh, it looks like Admin K. Skapsky. Who could that be? Is one who, oh, there we go. The demo gods are not smiling. Okay, let's go back because I know there's something in OneDrive here. So here we can see that we have one file in OneDrive, this document too, that's been labeled with highly confidential, and we can get a better idea of having a lot of fun here. But we can get, you know, more details about this information that we have right now. And then, of course, Activity Explorer, as I mentioned, it's going to tell you if when, you know, DLP roles are matched, when labels are applied, how people are interacting with your sensitive information. So I'm going to jump into DLP and I'm going to open a policy and then show you an example of DLP in action. So go down here. We'll go into policies here. Okay, right. So we have a few policies here. Go edit here because it's the same experience as creating a new one. So you create your policy, you name it, you add a description, choose admin units to apply it to. The default is just your full directory. And then in here, you can choose where to apply the policy. So this is where you can put in exceptions, either, you know, all sites or except for a few, or you can choose specific sites, specific accounts, etc. And this is a common thing across the Purview suite. You can do this with information protection. You can do it with data lifecycle management. Just pick and choose the locations where you want everything to apply. And then in DLP, you can choose. So when you roll out a policy, a default policy is going to come with the default rules. And then you can go in and customize them. So in here, we have different rules for low volume of content and high volume of content. So for this low volume, it's, I think, between 1 and 9 instances of credit card number, bank account number being shared. The user gets notified with an email, a policy tip, and an alert is sent to admin. But if it's over that quantity, then it's also going to send an incident report to the admin. So you can fine tune based on the quantity of data that's being shared, right? Because it might not be a big deal if somebody shares one full name, but if it's a list of like 300 full names, you might want to know what's happening, why somebody has a document with all of those names in it. Maybe it's something benign, maybe not. And so in the rule, you can go in and define the conditions for that content. So here we go, credit card number, bank account number, and then what actions you want to use to protect content. So you don't have to restrict access, you don't have to encrypt the content, but if you want to, you can say, okay, I'm going to block people outside the organization from accessing any content that contains this type of information in it, right? And then you can further go in and configure so your user notifications to help educate people on the proper use of sensitive info. You can give them policy tip, a notification email. You can customize that text. So if you have, let's say, a central SharePoint site where you include all of your policies and procedures, you could say, please review our policies and procedures here, what have you, right? It's all very customizable. You can allow overrides. You can set up your incident reports. And further within these rules too, like you can really go in and customize it to your heart's content, but this is, simple for the purpose of this demo. So I, off the side here, have a credit card, a fake credit card generator. And I am going to go into chatting with our good friend here, Megan Bowen, and I'm going to send my credit card number. And other information. So when I send this, a couple of minutes, it's going to try to send it. And then I get a message here. This message was flagged. What can I do? So in here, right, because in this policy, we didn't choose to prevent people from sharing information. We just chose to flag information being shared. So it was still sent, but it was flagged. Admins are going to see this. They're going to see where we're sharing this type of information. And it's going to tell me, the end user, why and what's going on here. And this, this default message is not very descriptive. I recommend going in and making it more descriptive. But there we go. So
Karen,
that's an example.
Just to be clear, so Megan, in this case, is just a user. She's posted a credit card number. You said that flag message, the admins would get alerted, like the Microsoft 365 global admins or whatever, they would get an email notification of some kind to say, hey, somebody violate, or I shouldn't say violated, that sounds so strong. Whatever word you want to use, a policy kicked in, they're going to get, oh, I see. Okay, so they get a report or an alert.
Yeah, so it depends on how you've configured it. And this is me trying to send, I'm just logged in with the admin account. I'm trying to send Megan my credit card number and I'm able to send it, but it's telling me that it's flagged. I didn't do anything to flag it. It just did that automatically based off of me having credit card info in there. And so I could choose to prevent it from being sent. And in that case, it would say, it looks like you can send it. So you type it in, you hit send, it goes through, but then it says, oh, this wasn't delivered because of, very similar to this experience.
Right. Okay.
So yes. So yeah, here we go. So alert DLP policy match for Teams conversation. So we can see that the admin for this, this organization was the one who triggered this. And so you have the event here.
Got it. So I got that mixed up. So the message was to Megan. Megan, in this case, you might not have set it up, but you're saying we could have intercepted that message and not sent it to Megan because it violated a policy.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, and this is funny. This is from actually earlier when I was messing around with this, just making sure that the demos line up for today. This was earlier. I was messaging Grady, Archie, some sensitive info. But yes, yeah, we can actually intercept that and prevent it from happening and tell the users why. Because it's not always malicious, right? Sometimes people just don't know how content is supposed to be shared. And so this example is a chat message, but one of the examples that I discussed earlier with the slides is uploading information to a SharePoint site. Like if you're uploading some sensitive employee information to a site that has external users, that's where it can come into effect as well and prevent people from doing such and educate them as to why. I'm going to check the chat or the Q&A here and see if there are any questions. Okay, I see some licensing questions. We can keep those to later. And so the next piece that I want to show you is the retention side of things. And with that one, unfortunately, I don't have a demo. It slipped my mind that retention actually takes quite a while to propagate out across the organization. So you're going to want to be creating those labels and policies like a week in advance, which I didn't do in this instance. So we're just going to look at it from the back end here. So in data lifecycle management, so again, so data loss prevention, to recap, that's where you're preventing people from sharing sensitive information where it shouldn't be shared. Now, data lifecycle management, this is where you're ensuring that important information is retained and irrelevant information is deleted. So we can go in here into labels. We can create retention policies, labels, label policies. These just the different areas, like it can be kind of confusing to piece together what's what. But it really just refers to how the retention is applied. So with labels, these can be applied at the item level. These can be applied manually or automatically using a label policy, and then with a retention policy. So by contrast, like you're going to apply this rather to a scope of information. So I'll just type in here, test, real original, I know. So in data lifecycle management, creating a retention policy. So you can choose adaptive or static scope. So you might only want to, I'll start with adaptive. So as I mentioned earlier, I think I said finance as the example. Anything that contains properties that define the users, groups, sites in the org. If it includes finance, maybe we want to make sure that that's retained for a certain amount of time. Or a static scope, so we can actually just go in and choose like specific sites, specific mailboxes, specific accounts, etc. And go in and choose how long we want to keep the items, what we want to do at the end. We don't have to delete things at the end like this, it's not all or nothing that we have to enforce. Okay, keep it for 7 years and then delete it after. You can just choose keep it for 7 years and then just prevent people from deleting any of that content before the period is up. And you can also configure it so that a disposition review is performed. So you can have various people review the content to make sure that, yes, it's okay to delete before it's deleted. You don't have to worry about this going in and just automatically deleting, clearing out all of your content. You know, if it's implemented properly, this shouldn't be doing anything like that. And then, so retention labels. So as I mentioned, these can be applied at the item level, very similar with what they do. And I'll give you an example here. So I'll open up the over here, right? Oh yes, and I mentioned, that's right, my retention labels. I don't think they've rolled out here. Yes, sorry, that is my bad. But it's a similar experience to sensitivity labels, where you would go in and you would choose the retention. And you can also go in and actually, for an entire document library, if you go into the library settings, yes, you can choose a default sensitivity label, but if you go into more library settings here, under permissions and management, apply label to items in this list or library. I don't have any propagated yet, but you can apply them here. So all right, and so finally we have our Microsoft information protection. So this is the sensitivity labels and policies. And so in here, these ones, not the Project Obsidian, but the personal, public, general, confidential, highly confidential. This is what you get if you follow that link that I shared in the chat there. This is what will be rolled out. It just gives you that quick foundation really easily there. And so we have, you know, multiple levels of sensitivity that we can use to classify things. And with the varying levels of sensitivity, we can choose to take particular actions. So I know that with highly confidential here, for highly confidential all employees, this policy will, once it loads, so this policy will add a watermark and a footer to classify content as highly confidential. With auto labeling, it's not going to automatically apply, but it's going to recommend that users apply the label if it detects certain content. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. But before that, I just want to show you again, as I have with the other areas here, just the tools that we have available with these labels. So I'll go in and edit this one. Let me do that. I'll do a Control F5. This is a Microsoft demo tenant through the CDX experiences. So, you know, it's not an actual organization that people are working in. And so things can, you know, it might not necessarily be handled in the same way as a live org would if you're seeing some kind of stickiness here. But, right. So go in and edit this. You know what? We're just going to create a new label. We're going to do that today. Okay. So again, a really basic example here, test. We can put a different label for end users to see if we want, blah, 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 description, Oh, there we go. It finally loaded the one that I was trying to edit. Okay, let's go in. This is more to do with, I think, me just clicking around a bunch than it is with with the technology itself. So don't let this scare you at all. So we'll go in and we'll edit this existing label. So with this one, I've chosen to apply it to items, but you can also apply it to groups, sites. Somebody was asking about information outside of Microsoft 365, so you can apply it to schematized data assets. Kelly also mentioned, I believe, Defender for cloud apps, and so on and so forth. Lots of capabilities. If you're concerned about anything that we haven't discussed here, and we can talk to you about strategies to protect. Okay, so then in here, this is where we choose the protection settings. So apply or remove encryption, apply content marking. And so in here, we can say, I want this content to expire 30 days after the label, or sorry, I want the user access to expire after a certain amount of days. I don't want to allow offline access, or maybe I only want to allow offline access for a couple days maximum. You can assign different permissions to specific users and groups. So we can go in and say that for any authenticated users, I mentioned we might want to restrict people from printing a file or from forwarding an email. We can get really granular. We can do all of this in here. Then in here, again, we can apply watermarks, headers, footers. And as with DLP, we can choose to have this automatically label based off of detecting certain types of content. So it doesn't have to be a manual exercise of going in and finding all that content and labeling it. You can test it out and roll it out based off of just the information that it's detecting. I'll go in and I'll show you what that might look like here and how we can apply it. So earlier showed over here, we can apply the sensitivity. So here, this one's general, all employees unrestricted. And I'm going to change that to the more highly confidential one, but I'll just open up the file first. So I'm going to make sure I open it in the browser here. Ooh, social security numbers. That's real sensitive. So so if my auto labeling policies were better tuned, it would automatically detect this and give it a more sensitive label. But again, this is just my demo tenant. It's not perfected by any means. So I'm going to go in and add that highly confidential all employees label. Okay. To refresh it. That was the one, right? That we have the watermark, the header and footer. Not seeing that just yet here, but it's always fun when we're doing this live. So let me see if I can open it in my desktop app and then show you what that looks like. The side here, I'm signing into the demo. All right, I'm getting issues with signing in. My apologies, that was not planned. Per perhaps, let's see if we can reload and see that, the watermark there. I mean, we know what a watermark looks like. We know what a header and footer look like. My apologies that the demo here isn't set up to show that, but there are plenty of examples online, and I can grab one if people really want. But now that we just have 10 minutes left today, I know we have a couple slides to close off the presentation. I want to check if there is anything that anybody really wanted to take a look at or talk about before we head over into closing off the presentation.
There are some questions in the Q&A if you want to take a look, Karen.
Yeah, perfect.
I'll address some of those as well. I don't know if you want me to take back the screen, Karen.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
And I believe people can come off mute if they have specific questions and want to ask Karen specifically. Because I know a lot of this stuff. Well, you can see I have some questions that wasn't planned. I genuinely like. It's a very Purview is another big brand for Microsoft around data governance, compliance, security, and you can see there's a lot going on. There's a lot of features to it. As Karen said, it's some of the features are require a lot of digging, a lot of testing, and a lot of time to elapse while we create the policies, and then the squirrels do their thing within our tenancy and our content, and starts flagging stuff before we can kind of act on them and demo it. So I'll just say it's awesome. There's a lot going on. As a longtime SharePoint person, obviously in the days of on-prem, we didn't have this. We didn't have these features, so we relied on the SharePoint permissions for better or for worse. And there was information protection server or information rights management, whatever it was called. I can't remember. But this is all included in your tenancy. It's just a matter of subscription, which was some of the questions. Let me just share my screen, and then we'll finish this off, and I'll address some of that stuff as well. Where am I here? So I will also add that even though this webinar is talking about Copilot, the stuff that data governance is something you should be doing regardless of Copilot. What the features and capabilities that the Purview brand offers is awesome for protecting our content. Because again, whether it's collaborating with external parties, securing our data for internal, for your eyes only type of things, sensitive information, all that stuff is necessary, again, with or without Copilot. What Copilot does, of course, is it exposes potentially a lot of this more easily, because we can ask it a natural language question and say, show me the salaries of the executive level people, or whatever. Obviously that's an extreme example, but it's because of that this is now heightened. And so if you're ready to explore Copilot and have a deeper dive into these conversations, we do offer two workshop/assessments. One is shorter, 2 days. But it does go into a deeper dive into Copilot. We get to talk about some user scenarios that your organization might want to explore. So the first session on the first option on the left is more about, hey, we're thinking about Copilot. We're not really sure. Let's talk a little bit more about Copilot before we buy the licenses, before we commit. And the second one is, hey, yep, we've committed. We're going to buy a few licenses. How do we protect our stuff? How do we do the stuff that Karen just talked about? So discussions about the governance decisions that our organizations need to make, some of the technical inspections of our tenancy, and it gives you a technical action plan. So there were a lot of questions about DLP specifically, I think. And Salim, just to answer your question just now, I think it is recorded. I believe it will be available. So these are some options. Reach out to your account manager or your CDW contact regarding Copilot and those particular offers. We do have a session coming up on February 8th. It was originally scheduled for, I think, last week, but we pushed it off because we felt that this session was a good appetizer to a deeper dive that they're going to provide, they being the security team. So CDW has a full security team dedicated to all things security. They have people that live and breathe Purview. And so this particular session on February 8th is all about DLP and can answer a lot of the questions, a lot of the technical ones probably that Nick and Brent had. Brent's about licensing, so I'll talk about that as well. Okay, so there's this session. Register for it. It'll be great. David and his team is awesome. As far as licensing, minimum licensing, I said I'd address it here. So Microsoft last week or so removed the restriction on the 300 licenses for E3, E5. The 300 minimum commitment. They removed that for enterprise level clients. I don't think there was an announcement for. Hang on. Nope, there is. So I know they were testing the small business licensing and allowing Copilot for that. I believe that's available now as well. So again, reach out to your license providers. Hopefully that's us, and we can have that discussion about what licensing level works for you. There was another question about what licensing do I need to do the stuff that Karen was talking about. I think Kelly answered that. Licensing is like Microsoft licensing, as most of us know, is an art form. And so we have people literally dedicated to Microsoft licensing. Again, reach out to us. We can figure out what you have and discuss, okay, well, if you want this particular Purview feature, you either already have it, or we can add on this particular license instead of going, directly from E3 to E5. You might just be able to add a little bit to start off with, or whatever, however that works. Again, don't quote me on anything to do with licensing because I'm not that person. I think that was it. Nick had the question about the email client, the external email client. I know Kelly was answering it. But again, yes, so CDW security team. I think that was it. Did I answer them all? Anything? Did I miss anything, Kelly? I don't think
There
so.
was a great question, in my opinion, about sharing links and how your Microsoft 365 tenant usually has a default sharing link option. And, if anyone, but if you restrict your sharing down, it's people in the organization. And the person that asked the question was saying, is that a concern? Do you think we should switch our default setting to people you choose? So I responded to that, but maybe you have some extra comments.
Nope. I defer to you. You're more in the trenches and have direct experience with clients, so no problem there. I will end off with this. Thanks for attending, by the way. Thanks for taking an hour of your time. I hope it was beneficial. We do want to have more of these type of sessions. Copilot. I love talking about data governance, as nerdy as that sounds. Because I like protecting our stuff. Like these systems are supposed to protect our content and allow us to work safely and securely. And so we're gonna have a survey, post-webinar survey come out. There's gonna be a question in there that says, hey, what content do you want to see? So whether it's Copilot or not, in this productivity space, let us know what you want to see and hear, and we'll try and make that happen. So with that, I think that's it. Karen, any last words? Kelly, last words?
Yeah, I wanted to expand upon the question that Kelly highlighted about the internal shareable link people in your organization. So Kelly Sherman and I actually tested this extensively the other week. If you're generating those links, it's not automatically giving Copilot like everybody's Copilot experience access to that. So let's say Sherman generated a people in my organization link to some content that was previously secured, and he sends out that link. If I haven't clicked on the link, Copilot, for me, when I'm interfacing with it, is not going to be indexing that content. It only really registers it as you having access once you've authenticated to that content. So it's not as huge of a risk as it may seem, but it's still something to get dialed in.
And if you have concerns about oversharing or just general link usage, Microsoft does have SharePoint Advanced Management as a tool that you as an administrator can use to get a better picture of what's going on. If you want to know more about that, we can always talk about that in a future session.
With
Great.
that,
Thank you,
we're
everybody.
1 minute past the top of the hour. Again, yeah, thanks again. And thanks to Karen and Kelly. And we will see you next time. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week. Bye.